So some interesting things there that came up that I just want to really point out. So many considerations. We joked about decluttering and all that kind of stuff, and that's important, but things like where's my doctor located? Where can I get access to kids or grandkids or even shopping? All those different things really come into play. The other thing to consider is the fact that, and they mentioned it, your kids and your neighbors and all the people that are giving you advice and nattering in your ear about the real estate transaction, their goals are not the same as your goals. Okay? A lot of times, your kids might be, let's get this done quickly. Right? Let's get it out of the way. I don't want this on my plate. Right? Whereas your goals, obviously, like I said, might be to take it a little bit slower. Be comfortable with the transaction. You're selling the family home. You've been there for a while. Again, what do your neighbors want to see from you? Well, they want to see you get top dollar. Why? Because it makes their house get top dollar. Right? So they want to make sure that your real estate transaction is going to be okay for their real estate transaction. But maybe, again, that's not your goal. Maybe it's finding the right buyer. Maybe it's having no conditions. Maybe it's finding somebody who will do a cash deal as opposed to a conditioned deal. All that kind of stuff. There's so many things that come into consideration. So, you sell the house. What do you do now? Right? Interesting. They brought up an interesting thing, and I often suggest you need to do your research. You need to look around and you need to figure out, to a certain degree, at least have an idea of what the next stage looks like. Okay? That's why we're talking a little bit about the place next door. That might be 2 stages away. But that's okay. You can plan well in ahead, like well in advance. It's a good thing, not a bad thing. So what does the next stage look like? Well, if it's simply a downsize, right size, the reason why we came up with this word, by the way, was in a lot of cases, if you've looked around, if you're moving from a 2-story house with a nice decent lot in South Burlington to a bungalow right on the other side of this building that they're the bungalofts, I think they're called, is that right? The bungalofts, guess what? It's going to be a smaller house. The price is going to be about the same. It's not a downsize, it's a right size, because you're getting rid of some stairs. Okay? So again, that's why this to me is a lot more friendly word and probably a lot more accurate word than what downsizing and the connotations that come around that. Okay? So if we look at right sizing, should I now own, or maybe should I consider renting? Right? As Tanya mentioned earlier, they have units for sale and they also have units for rent. Okay? We had this very conversation with somebody that was in the room just yesterday. There is no right or wrong answer. Okay? And the reason being is, you think that being the finance guy, I would tell you, well, the numbers dictate you should own your house. And yeah, that's probably correct. However, when it gets down towards, let's say, the back half of your life, some of the intangibles start to become more important. Okay? For instance, am I trying just to simplify my estate as much as possible? And if so, not having to sell a house through an estate sale is definitely the easiest way to go. Am I trying to minimize probate fees? Well, again, if I sold my house and opened up a joint account with my kids, I've avoided probate fees. There's a whole lot of considerations that are not necessarily financial, but you might want to look at when own versus rent. So the situation is different for everybody. And if you don't have an investment advisor, you can talk to myself or you can talk to Scott. We can help you talk through the transaction, give you some ideas. We've got some experience of what clients have gone through before. I can tell you from experience that some of my clients that went into condo living that thought they would hate it, absolutely love it. They love the fact that they can go and just go click, click, walk away for 3 months, 4 months, go visit the kids out west and go down to Florida for a month and go over to Europe for a few weeks and all that kind of stuff. They just love the simplicity of it. Yet they thought they would miss their garden so much that it was unbearable to think that they would put themselves in a condo situation. Like I said, don't knock it till you try it. So let's talk about the financials around this a little bit. Right sizing. I'm going to give you some ideas of what to do with the proceeds, because assuming you do sell your house, and there is a bit of a downside there, you might come into a financial windfall, or if you go into a rental situation, you'll have a large windfall. So have quite a bit of dollars to deal with. So what do we do with this? Well, if you haven't already used a tax-free savings account, definitely a good time to start. Here's the piece of good news. If you haven't opened up a tax-free savings account yet, the contribution room is cumulative, okay, going back to 2009. So in 2012 next year, you'll be allowed to put in $5,000 a year for 9, 10, 11, and 12, meaning that you can put away $20,000. If there's you and a spouse, put away 2 times $20,000. So right away, you just sheltered $40,000 of any future income off the proceeds of the sale of your house. Vacation or travel account. In a lot of cases where we've done a right size of a home for a client, I'll give you a perfect example. You sell your house for $450,000 and you buy another place, let's say it is some form of condo living, you buy it for $300,000 after all expenses, real estate fees, lawyers' fees, new furniture, new drapes, all that wonderful stuff. Okay? So you've got about $100,000 to spend, if you will, or to put into your investments. Well, in a lot of cases, if you're still mobile and able to do so, you know what? Go out and enjoy some of that money. And that's where the travel/vacation account comes in. So in some clients, what we do is we actually say, okay, let's set aside all of this money, a portion of this money, and let's spend it. You're 70 years old right now. We figure you'll have decent mobility until you're 80 years old. So you got 10 years to go out and just have fun. Take a few extra trips. Do what you want to do. So $10,000, if we got $100,000, $10,000 a year for the next 10 years. Put it in a nice safe spot where we can disperse it whenever you need it. Okay? So again, it doesn't necessarily be, and I think Tanya actually mentioned off the beginning of the presentation that a lot of people want to do other things. Well, those are the types of things we're talking about. Early inheritances, you might want to give the kids or grandkids some money. No. You know what? You've seen all the bumper stickers. This is my kid's inheritance. When you see the 80-year-old guy driving by in the Mercedes or the Jaguar, that kind of thing. Okay, it's totally up to you. Different strokes for different folks. But again, when there's been a windfall, and actually one of the most recent ones that I've had with a client, they did have a right sizing their home. We had quite a bit of proceeds to deal with, and so we ended up opening a registered education savings plans for all the grandkids. Okay, so actually skipping the child generation, because her children are actually in great shape financially, and goes straight to the grandkids. Charitable donations. Again, obviously you have to have a will to want to do some philanthropy, something that I feel is very important in any tax plan, and also estate plan to kind of pay it forward. I do a lot of work with the Canadian Cancer Society. It's not for everybody to do charitable donations, but if you are, I can tell you that, why put them in your will when you can have the tax receipts today and enjoy the benefits today of the contributions? I have so many clients that come to me and show me their wills, and in their will, they say, well, 5% of the residue to my local church or the Canadian Cancer Society or the SPCA or whatever the case may be. Well, guess what? You didn't get the benefit from the tax receipt at all. Your estate did, but you didn't. Okay? So you may want to look at doing that type of stuff earlier. Put more dollars in your pocket and give the money to the charity now while they need it. So basically, to me, the big thing that comes out of this amount, especially if we're going to rent, is that we need to fund the fixed expenses. And how can we do that? Well, obviously, there's traditional GICs and bonds. Anybody seen the rates lately?
What rates?
What rates? Good point, yes. So, okay, your biggest thing is that you've got great securities in GICs and bonds. Okay, and I think it's important to have in anyone's portfolio to have that stability in there. However, right now, it's just not feasible. Does everybody remember the 80s, the early 80s? Hey, my grandfather used to tell me, my Canada Savings Bond used to pay me 18%, right? Well, guess what? Dad's mortgage at that time was also 14.5, right? And we've got the lowest mortgage rates we've seen in 50, 60 years now. Okay? So it's all relative. Inflation was high. Yes, rates were high. Well, right now inflation is low, rates are extremely low, and guess what? They're going to stay low for a while, so we've got to look at other alternatives. So we look to dividend-based portfolios. We look to stocks, Canadian stocks like the banks. I get so many clients that come in and see me, I want to buy the banks. Oh, great, we make money. We do $1 billion a quarter. We do quite well. We pay a nice dividend too, about 4.5%. But I can tell you from experience that in June of 2008, when TD Bank stock was at $76 a share, everybody was really happy. Now, if you could have fallen into a coma and woken up yesterday, you'd still be really happy because guess what? TD Bank stock is at $75 a share. And it pays you over 4% dividend throughout that period of time. Here's the problem. March of 2009, TD was trading at $33 a share. TD Bank, down 60-65%. So in other words, great in concept, okay, let's get a 4.5%, 5%, 6% dividend in a safe company, but I can tell you, having lived through with my clients, in actuality, in reality, that kind of ride is much too volatile for most people to stomach. Okay? So a portion of your portfolio in bonds might make sense. A portion of your portfolio in dividend-based stocks might make sense. And so if we're talking about balanced portfolios, well then let's talk about how to make them tax efficient through something like a tax efficient systematic withdrawal plan. So we're going to talk at number 3 and number 4 in a little bit more detail because they're a little bit less common. Flip the slide, please, Ron. So this is a little bit hard to see, but I'll explain it to you. So this is